Hello and welcome to the Garian Tabletop. I am Garian Rivan. This is a Far Waste devlog. I will admit this took longer to do than I thought, but I must say I'm very happy with the results. Because it's rubbish. Maybe I should scrap it all, go scavenging for something new. See what I did there? See, I spent weeks writing loot tables, which, while not the most exciting thing on paper, are very exciting for players. Combine that with the importance of scavenging in the post-apocalypse, and I really wanted to do the loot tables justice, and I think I've done that. So I'm quite excited to share it. There are effectively two kinds of loot that can be found, planned loot and random loot. Planned loot is when the GM chooses particular items or weapons or whatever to be wielded by the enemy or found or something like that. Random loot is what loot tables are for. They determine loot based on scavenging. Also, I apologise, I'm kind of ill at the moment, otherwise this video would have been out a couple of weeks ago. I've been very ill for the last couple of weeks. Anyway, typically planned loot will have the important or special stuff, like planned items, particularly chosen weapons, or anything else the GM definitely wants the squad to have. This will usually be found in the open or otherwise in a place not reliant on a scavenging check. Random loot may or may not be found, but is vital to give the world the sense that it's littered with scrap, discarded objects, and the odd forgotten gem. Players will never quite know what they'll find of this, encouraging them to scavenge as much as possible. I'll mostly be talking about random loot today, but even for planned loot, loot tables can give an idea of how and where certain things can be found. First off, don't worry, I'm not going to go through all the loot tables. They are what I'd call back-end GM stuff, so they're not particularly fascinating to read. That said, I'll show a couple, explain how they work, and why I've designed them the way I have. Without further ado, here is a Far Waste loot table. All the loot tables use one or more D100s, but let's break this down a bit. These are used by the GM to prepare the random loot. Players shouldn't really have direct contact with these, as all the rolling can be done well in advance during the preparation for a session. For the GM, there are three things to do. 1. Roll on the area-specific loot table. 2. If the result isn't a kind of scrap, either roll on its own specific table or choose something. 3. If it's weapons or armor, consult their tables handily organized by player level. See, loot isn't universal. Players will find totally different stuff if they search a pre-poc industrial facility compared to a post-poc pirate base. To represent this, there are 9 loot tables covering just about every environment in the game. Pre- and post-poc versions of industrial, labs, military and residential, and the wastes and wilderness. Each of these has examples of the kinds of locations that fit. For the pre-poc industrial scene here, there are the maintenance areas of our colleges or abandoned warehouses, places unused, degraded, but relatively undisturbed. This variety of tables will hopefully make locations feel different and encourage players looking for something in particular to think about where they might find it. A chemist looking for chem scrap would have an easier time in a lab compared to a military base. We will come back to scrap, but onto the second step of rolling loot. Numerous items on this table have C table on the result. These are referring to additional tables that further randomize what's found, like compounds. The compound table is another D100, listing all the compounds that can be found, obviously. Everything from health restoration with a cure serum to mutagenics. A GM can choose something off this list if they want, or roll to let fate decide. It's also worth checking the examples on the area-specific table, as that might have suggestions about the kind of results that fit the location. For example, residential areas will almost never have stuff like mutagens, usually limited to more common health compounds. The third step of rolling loot is weapons and armor. Unlike most items, which will rarely unbalance the game whenever they're acquired, weapons and armor are perhaps the most dominant way that players progress, way up there with their stats. Getting a high-power gun early could trivialize combat as their damage doesn't scale. A 50 cal bullet will hurt just as much if it's fired by a complete amateur as by a professional, assuming it hits. Because of this, the weapon and armor tables are split into 3 tiers, each covering about 4 levels of character growth. To remind you, in the last devlog, which admittedly was a little while ago, I talked about how I've reduced the level cap from 25 to 13. This means the 3 tiers are levels 1 to 4, 5 to 8, and 9+. As players progress through the tiers, the early game weapons and armor become less common as they're less useful against new threats. That said, they can still be found. After deciding this system, I had a bit of an issue. There are a lot of weapons. There are already 23 results on the levels 1 to 4 table, and that's a lot even for a D100. And there are 65 for the level 9+ table. With 100 possible roll results, most things on the table would have a 1% chance. Not much room for weighting newer options. So instead, while the levels 1 to 4 table is a D100, 5 to 8 is 2 D100s. This means the lowest result is a 2 and the highest is 200. Then the 9+ table is 3 D100s. While this may sound excessive, in practice it's, I think, a very elegant solution that allows one staggered table to work across 13 levels of player growth. Taking an example, the 5.56 battle rifle is the loot if 61 to 66 is rolled on the 1 to 4 table, 50 to 53 on the 5 to 8 table, and 46 to 48 on the 9+ table. To simplify for comparison, that's a 6% chance on 1 to 4, about 2% on 5 to 8, and about 1% on 9+. Given it's the starting rifle, this reflects its drop in usefulness without erasing it from the world. Some weapons even become more common in the later tables if they were at the very top of their bracket for the lower levels, such as the GB Sniper. Found only on 160 on the 5 to 8 table and then 136 to 140 on the 9+. It goes from about 0.5% up to about 1.7%. May not sound like much, but it's a very powerful gun that will have a massive impact if found. All the more reason for the team sniper to want to scavenge. Armor is similar, but sticks to a D100 for all 3 tables. This is because there are fewer armor choices with 27 at the highest levels. Granted, low tier armor may not save your life late game, but it's definitely better than no armor. All of this sounds like a lot of information and numbers, because it is. This is the back-end GM stuff. Numbers make the game work. But the specifics of what needs to be rolled or the percent chance don't really matter when playing. Due to the way scavenging is done, a GM can fully prepare whole lists of loot ahead of time with minimal faff. But before we go on to scavenging itself, let's talk scrap. Having scrap as a resource is an idea that's bounced around since the conception of the game. In the post-apocalypse, particularly when there is a class literally called the Scrapper, finding and making use of the remains of the world before seemed vital. This can be seen originally in the Machinist class, where they used scrap to make gadgets, though the concept wasn't explained. Now, all but the Master make use of some form of scrap for their class abilities. To tie it in so intrinsically with core functions of each class, scrap needs to be easily obtained but limited. If everyone has infinite, what's the point of the resource? And as I said before, this can lead to specific outings in search of particular scrap. Chemicals for the chemist, for example. The basics of scrap are that there are 4 kinds that can be found, and they come in 2 or 3 qualities each. There's scrap, chem scrap, e-scrap, and precious scrap. They each have their own use and values, but are simple for players to use. Let's blitz through some scrap. Ordinary scrap, simply called scrap, is the only one with 3 qualities: low grade, work grade, and high grade. Scrap is the catch-all term for anything that doesn't fit into one of the other types, a staggeringly vast assortment of metal, wood, plastic, and other material components. Low grade is nearly worthless. Jagged metal, broken glass, etc. Stuff even a scrapper can't use. But given the necessity of recycling in the post-poc, a suitably equipped town would buy this in bulk for processing. This can be found in decent quantities pretty much anywhere. Work grade is the bread and butter of scrappers and machinists. Sheet metal, sturdy wood, maybe even a bit of Kevlar. Any class feature that needs plain scrap, this is what it uses. It's also very common, but in lower quantities. High grade is the best stuff that you can't use. Rare alloys, fine-tooth gears, and other delicate bits and bobs. Highly valued and very useful, it can be found in most areas in low quantities. Where the simplicity of scrap lies is how the higher quality is used. You will rarely, if ever, need high-grade scrap for your use. It can be sold, worth more than work grade, and certainly more than low grade, or you can convert it down for higher quantities. 5-to-1 specifically. Run out of work grade scrap but have 3 high grade? You can turn that into 15 work grade, or just 1:5. This process can't be reversed but is instantaneous. Basically, keep your scrap in the highest form you find it, unless you need it. Chem scrap is usually some form of chemical in a sealed container. There's home grade and lab grade. Home grade is bottles of isopropyl alcohol, cleaning supplies, basic medication. Soldiers can use this to make ammo, and chemists use it for their compounds. Lab grade is the top shelf stuff. Virulent acids, powerful reagents, pure chemicals. Very valuable, but very rare. A drum of any lab-grade chem scrap is well worth the effort to haul. E-scrap is electronics, basically, split into recycled and commercial. Recycled e-scrap is broken circuit boards, bent fans, frayed wires, etc. Transitors will use this in some form, as do machinists for electronic gadgets. Commercial e-scrap can be intact spare parts, pristine circuits, or even whole appliances. Very valuable, but also quite fragile. Finally, precious scrap serves very little practical function for even scrappers, but is highly valued for specialist production, attempts to overhaul currency, or just good old-fashioned avarice. It comes in tarnished and pristine. Tarnished precious scrap is broken plated components, mangled capacitors, inlaid furniture, stuff with minute amounts of recoverable material. Although ostensibly precious, it only has value to settlements capable of extracting it. To everyone else, it's basically low-grade scrap. Pristine precious scrap, however, is clearly valuable. Rows of gold pins, platinum candlesticks, literal jewellery. Even small-time traders will see their worth and want them. Excluding precious, all kinds of scrap are useful for multiple classes. Currently 4 use plain scrap and 3 each for chem and E. The scrapper is the only one who can use all 3, but that varies by subclass. None of them use precious because it's too rare and valuable to make a class rely on. Now, with all the contents of the loot table explained, how do the players get it? By scavenging. It's one of the game's skills and can be improved through level ups and honing as normal, but to represent the importance of this activity, it has slightly deeper mechanics. Players that want to can roll a scavenging check, which is a d20 plus their scavenging skill. So far, so normal. Where it differs is the GM doesn't choose how hard it is to scavenge. Instead, the total result of the check determines how many times the GM rolls on the loot table. A total of less than 8 gives a single loot roll. Bad luck, but you're not great at finding much. 8 gives 2 loot rolls, with each additional 4 to the total adding another. A total of 12 gives 3 loot, 16 gives 4, 20 gives 5, etc. A natural 1 on the roll sadly finds no loot at all. Maybe they were heavy-handed, clumsy, or just unable to find anything. Conversely, a natural 20 gives an extra loot roll in addition to whatever the total is. The reason I think this system is quite convenient to the GM is they can get a list of pre-rolled results. Roll on the loot tables while prepping the session, and you can just go down the list as they find stuff, ticking off loot as they get it. If a GM does this, it's a good idea to roll a few more results than you think you'll need. A lucky roll or unexpected boost might tip them over to getting more than you prepared. The final note on scavenging is a sort of limit. To avoid players searching every little room they encounter, scavenging checks are done in larger or central rooms, and affect all the little rooms connected to them. This also explains how niche or unusual items can be found. They were tucked away in the corner of a supply closet, for example. It's also advised that players fully explore an area before beginning to loot it, as that side room might have some dormant robot or foraging creature within. This was a bigger devlog and job than I expected, but the loot tables were one of the last remaining things I wanted to do before beginning playtesting. Just enemy profiles, basically, and then we'll begin. You should join us on the Gary and Riva Discord, check out the Far Waste Lab, and become a member on Patreon, even as a free user, to show your support and help build a community. All of that is linked in the description. And please share this around to your friends and gaming groups so that we can continue to grow and improve. Thank you very much for watching. My website, Rivan Games Patreon, and the Far Waste Lab are all linked in the description. Subscribe for more Far Waste devlogs or for board games, card games, miniatures, and TTRPGs kinda like this. And I will catch you later.